And what do you do? You're a comedian, but do you have like a day job?
Yeah, we could start right here. Hello. Oh, sorry for to catch you mid sip. What's up, dude?
What's up? No, I'm excited for this.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
This is great. I'm very much looking forward to this. So my day job, I work as I fucking love the Whataburger stickers. That's hilarious. Is it only Whataburger?
It's only Whataburger, and they're like printed on there. Like it looks like stickers, but
that's phenomenal.
I like fell down their website at one point, and I'm like a sucker for good marketing, and I was like, oh, I need this water bottle.
Yeah, Whataburger. That's because now that I'm starting to do stand up, a lot of late nights, and the 24-hour Whataburger was killing my insides. Just all the time, just getting Whataburger. Then I stepped on the scale one day. I was like, fuck.
You're like, gotta stop this.
It's time. Yeah, it's time to cut back.
Damn.
But no, my day job is I'm a recruiter for a security company.
Okay.
So it's all right. Yeah, it pays the bills. You know what I mean?
It does what it needs to. Mm-hmm. I hear that.
But yeah, we were talking about it earlier. Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, it hasn't been like super crazy, but you know, after I did that Trump episode, there were a few people that don't text me back anymore. Yeah. There's a few people that don't talk to me and just act a little weird around me now. It's like, God, do you think I have leprosy or some shit? Like, it's not.
It's an interesting time and an interesting environment, and I think when we're not willing to share space with people who might have opposing views to us, that's where we get lost. So. But
also on the. As if you want to grab the mic and kind of just bring it down. No, I'm behind it right there. You just like aim it towards you a little bit. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
If it'll stay.
It should stay. Watch.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, because that one got all fucked up and I had to like repair it and shit. I've been meaning to switch it over just to make it easier on guests. But no, but then on the flip side of it, to be completely honest, because I put it at the end of the episode, but I wanted to highlight it, so I made it a reel. And I was just like, hey, if anybody's listening to this, because it was 2 hours of me just saying why I did what I did. Mm-hmm. I voted for Trump. Like, it was a bad thing. No, like, why I voted for Trump. And, like, from my foreign policy to the economy to immigration to all this different kind of stuff. And at the end of it, I was just like, hey, anybody's got anything different to say, you're more than welcome. Yeah. Like, to talk about it, I do this. I've done an hour-long podcast. I've done 5-hour podcasts, however long you'd like.
I was wondering, I was like, damn, are we going to go an hour? Or are we going to go, like...
As much time as you'd like. But, no, I had a couple people reach out. So now I'm in the process of getting people scheduled to do a debate. And I got a buddy of mine that's going to come in and moderate and do it live. So none of it, not that this gets edited anyway, but like it's not going to be doctored or no room for excuses.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, that's good. And I think discomfort is where people find growth anyway. So sitting across the table with someone who has opposing views is a really healthy way to like test your triggers and your boundaries. So
yeah. Well, and for me, like, I would like to, that's the thing though, too, is like, there is a lot of me that would like to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, granted, it's after the fact, he's already elected, whatever.
Right.
But I would like to be proven wrong because, and it's funny too, because I put out the initial thing saying I voted for Trump and I got some shit for it. Mm-hmm. But then I put out a video, like an excerpt from it, saying how I don't like Trump and the things that I don't like about it. Because there's a lot of things I don't fucking like about the guy.
Right.
And outlining some things I didn't like about him. And that's when all the I used to say Kamala supporters were like, this is some of the best thing I've ever heard you say. I agree.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, well, yeah, no shit. Because I'm just throwing a lob into your echo chamber.
Right.
But the moment it's anything pro, it's like, fuck. He's yeah, I had some random, and he's kind of a basket case anyway. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was some guy who used to do stand-up. Mm-hmm. He was randomly just talking shit about people on his Facebook at like 2 a.m.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, yeah. And then I barely even knew the guy, like just in passing, open mics, whatever. And I randomly get a Facebook notification where he tags me, and he goes, what is it? He goes, Noah Vargas is a MAGA cuck.
Oh my god.
It's something like extremism has no color or some shit. And I'm like, okay. I know that I'm a white Hispanic, but all right, whatever.
Oh,
yeah, it is an interesting time being alive right now.
It's really hard, and I think they've done a really good job driving division between people and getting people to just side one way or the other. And regardless of the side that you pick, once you say you're for one side, like all these other beliefs like start stacking up, and these like assumptions that people make around people's political views. And I work for a Democratic state. I work under a Democratic government, and I see kind of like both sides of the coin. And I know that there's a lot of people who are like really in pain right now based on kind of what happened and how they're going to have to move forward. And I just spent the last week in St. Louis at a conference all about kind of like moving equity and inclusion work forward.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the amazing people over at Chop Chili Company. Guys, they are the original sponsor of this podcast, and I could not be happier to continue to be working with these guys. I get it. It's New Mexico. Everyone loves red, green, both. But this genuinely is my favorite brand of chili here in the state of New Mexico, and I love being able to partner up with these guys. They are absolutely phenomenal. Zane and the rest of the team at Chop Chili do an amazing job running that company, and they make an absolutely phenomenal product. And right now, they are running a very special promotional on their Instagram. Go check them out on Instagram. Go give them a follow. And as they post pictures with the hashtag Where's My Chili Challenge, if you can guess where in New Mexico that picture was taken, you can win not only free red or green chili, but also a free custom t-shirt directly from the company themselves. Again, go check them out on Instagram, give them a follow, check out their hashtag Where's My Chili Challenge. Win yourself some free chili, win yourself some free shirts. They are also available in Smith's, Albertsons, Sprouts, and a ton of other grocery stores in the state of New Mexico, as well as El Paso, and they are expanding out to West Texas. Again, thank you so much to Zane and the rest of his amazing team over at Chop Chili. Back to the episode.
In an environment that is going to try and stomp it out. And it's real interesting because I just think like people are resilient and communities are resilient. So you almost need the juxtaposition and challenge that a Trump administration will bring against the work in order to keep it moving forward, which is kind of a weird
I see what
thing
you're
to
saying.
say. But like I said, like growth only happens in moments of discomfort. Like you have to get out of the comfort zone. And I think that there's been a misconception that like the work is done. We're going to elect our first Black female president and all is well and the United States is going to be fine. And it's like there's so many issues, regardless of like the areas and situations that you look at. If we're looking at healthcare, if we're looking at homelessness, if we're looking at immigration, whatever all those things are, there's still a lot of issues that we have to deal with. And those issues also are like ongoing. They don't just go away and they don't get fixed. And it's funny to me when people think that like a president is going to be the one to fix all of the problems that you're seeing, when like my thing is like it starts at a local level. Like everyone gets all emotional over a presidential election, as we always do. But the truth is that what you're doing in your day-to-day work, in your day-to-day lives, in your community, with people, like that's where that shit starts. That's where change starts. That's where politics actually happens. Like you need to go to your city council meetings and your local government meetings, and I could go on a whole soapbox rant about that.
Welcome.
And I
don't
necessarily want to, but like that's where it starts. And I think people get distracted by a commander-in-chief who has a lot of power over the country. But there's a reason that we have 50 states, and there's a reason that states get to make that decision first. And that's what we've been, like, that's how we were founded. So I think it is going to be like a little bit, there's a lot of people who are scared right now. So like I acknowledge the fear. And then at the same time, there's a whole other, the other 50%, right? Who's like basically cut down the middle, which is a scary place to be, who are really excited. So there's like this excitement and this fear, and to me that's like two different sides of the same spectrum.
Well, I would say, okay, so a few things. First one, you're completely right about people, thinking that a president's going to fix everything. And that's my big worry. Amongst a few reasons that I have, that's one of the big things I don't like about the MAGA crowd, about that hyper right Republican side of things, because it's like they've put Trump, the Republican Party, especially with that MAGA movement, they've put Trump on a higher pedestal than Reagan could ever be. You know what I mean? They've put him on this like godlike stature where it's like, hey, listen, man, I get it. He's very charismatic. He's very charming. And I mean, he's an entertainer. Like, that's his whole deal, right? I get that. And there's a lot of positives about him. But whether it's Trump, whether it's some other Republican, or even if it was Kamala Harris, they're not going to fix everything.
Right.
Because A, that's not how our government's set up. There's processes things have to go through, A, and B, they're human. They're like, Trump is going to do some things that Republicans don't like. Like, you want to shut down. This is my advice that I give to anybody who wants to piss off a MAGA supporter. Ask them what Trump did for gun laws and ask them who started the COVID lockdowns. And then they're just kind of stumped.
Oh, man.
Because it's like...
That's who it was, yeah.
Because you kind of have to remember that he did some things that are against the traditional conservative values.
Right.
Right? Well, now, granted, lockdowns are against American values, but... You know, it's like he's the one that started all of that. So you got to remember, he's going to do some things you guys are not going to like either.
Right.
So it's just one of those things. And yeah, with the way the government's set up, like when you're talking about things like what people are so very, and I get why people are afraid and very concerned, especially people who live in states that have outright abortion bans.
Yeah.
Like I completely get that, right? Because now there's like next to no hope of getting those lifted. I totally get that. And that's more than understandable. But as far as like attacks on like, I guess like minority groups, I think that's more of a product of fear mongering from the media. Like, we're not gonna have gay people riled up into camps. We're not gonna have transgender people kicked out of the country or any of these crazy things. Like, those are things that I've heard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or not heard like personally, but things that I've seen on social media. Like that's one of the reasons why I deleted TikTok. Oh, I'm just fucking done. Like there is just so and it's the far left and the far right just saying these like hyperbolic things, whether or not they believe it, because it's very possible. I think people forget this. Just like with the corporate media, it's very likely that these people you're following on social media, they want to post hyperbolic videos hyperbolic videos because they're going to get views and they're going to get shares and rage bait and clickbait. That's still a thing.
Yeah. If you can provoke an emotional response in someone and get them riled up and get them to comment, like, or share, that turns into monetization for you. So that's what people are going to push. And I know, especially in New Mexico, like there's a lot of folks in our immigrant communities that are super scared right now. And at this point, we don't really know. And that's my thing is like a politician always comes out with some BS 100-day plan about how they're going to do amazing things in the first amount of time. And none of those, not saying that any of those things are amazing. Like honestly, for the election, I checked out beforehand because I'm tired of people not being able to address real roots of problems and then like waiting, thinking that the federal government is going to step in to fix things, or a state government or your local government. And there's places where government plays a role, but I think we need to focus on fixing potholes and fixing infrastructure.
No, thank you for saying that. No. I just thank you for saying that because I remember very clearly this was 2019. Me and my girlfriend, we went on a road trip from here to Denver. We have shitty roads. We have some of the worst roads I have ever driven on. It's like you cross the state line and it goes.
Oh no!
It's just perfect. Yeah. Perfect roads in Colorado. It's like, this is what tax dollars look like. Oh, okay, I guess. But you're completely right, and it's ironic. Now I just thought about this. It's ironic because one of Reagan's most famous quotes is one of the scariest sentences is 11 words. Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And then they turn around and they put Trump to where they've put him. It's very ironic, these things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you mentioned a little bit earlier that you went to St. Louis and you were giving, you were at a conference that was for like DEI. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, it was the Race Forward Facing Race National Convening. So it was like across the entire country, a lot of racial equity practitioners coming together to share best practices and share learnings. And a lot of great stuff coming out of that. And also like a lot of heaviness and a lot of kind of concern about like where the future is going to be. And I think the thing about that is that the fact is that as humans, we've always been fighting a struggle, regardless of kind of like which community, which minority groups, which background, whatever demographic that we're like latching onto for the day. There's always been an uphill battle for communities to get like access to an equal starting line, and that we weren't all at the same starting place before Trump was elected, and we're not necessarily going to be in the future. Like, we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of years of like historical trauma done to small communities and indigenous communities and Black and brown communities, Native Americans. Like, you can't fix that in 4 to 8 years. Like, that's a generational effort that has overtaken kind of a lot of ways like that the entire world operates, and there's like, it's going to take a lot to fix. So I just don't think that, you know, one candidate was going to solve that either way. And I don't know if it's going to make it a lot harder. And I think I did another kind of like talk podcast situation, and I think my thing is like, this work is always going to be difficult, and that's kind of like why I say like, once a Jedi, always a Jedi, which is like one of my previous work titles, is like, there's always going to be work to do to bring balance back to the forest and to advocate for people who haven't had advocacy. And whether that work is called DEI, racial equity, whether or not you're allowed to say those words at all, like, that work is going to exist because there's always going to be a need. And that doesn't really, like, that's not going to change. People need access, they need support. And whether that's from the government or from healthcare or from educational systems, like, everybody, every human needs that kind of support. And historically and statistically, race is the biggest social determinant of certain outcomes, and that's just fact.
Is it race, or is it your socioeconomic starting point?
Well, race can also determine your socioeconomic outcomes in life. So if you put race up against all these other factors of educational attainment, income, what kind of health outcomes you're going to have in your own life, Black and brown communities are statistically higher to have like less attainment in those areas. And that's just any way that you measure it. So it is race, but it's also that's been a construct and a structure that the United States has worked very hard on since kind of like its inception. Like, that's not new. Like, India is still operating on a caste system right now. Like, if you are darker, you have less opportunity. And it's not to say that race is the only determinant, but it's one of the strongest determinants when you stack up all the other achievement and attainment rates, like, across statistics. And it doesn't mean that you can't, quote, like, raise yourself by the bootstraps and work out of it. It just, there's other barriers that come into that, right? And I think, so I'm so sorry it has to be political, but like...
No. Well,
like, so think like Yazzie Martinez case in New Mexico, right? Or the Black Education Act. The Yazzie Martinez case won against the New Mexico Supreme Court, I think it was, because of the fact that Native students were getting left behind in our public education system, and that there was a clear...
So what was the background behind it? Like, what started all that?
I'm not like totally researched on it, but the Yazzie Martinez case is a case that was brought forward that there was students, specifically Indigenous and Native students, that were not hitting the same attainment rates as New Mexico students across the board.
You said Yazzie Martinez? Mm-hmm. Okay. No, continue.
And that finding got brought to like the legislature and the New Mexico Supreme Court, and when they started stacking up attainment rates based on race, it was shown that Native students weren't graduating with the same kind of like reading levels and educational levels to have a competitive chance at continuing on to higher education. So maybe not APS, but the public education system in New Mexico was then basically sued and held accountable to figure out, what are you going to do to make sure that your Native students are graduating at the same rates as all these other students that you have in these classes.
Right.
And I think it's not
Well, it looks like the product of it was their, reading straight from the public education website. So I don't want to say a result of this. So a result of this case being brought up. So the New Mexico Public Education Department's 4-part strategy creates an effective and equitable system of supports for all students focused on root cause analysis, equity-focused leadership, continuous improvement, and culturally and linguistically responsive curriculum and pedagogy. I've never even heard that word.
Yeah, pedagogy. It's like talk about academic words getting thrown in there. I think like levels and structure of learning when I think pedagogy.
So, okay, that makes sense. I think what concerns people, and I include myself in this group, because I think DEI just as a concept,
right?
It for me,
it does the same thing for people who have conservative and like right-leaning views that saying the word Trump will have on like left-leaning and liberal progressive.
So it's turned
the same visceral response.
It's turned into that, unfortunately. Yeah. And I think DEI is in the same category as the Me Too movement, where it started out with the correct intentions, like, hey, there's an issue. This is the banner under which we are going to tackle it. Let's go from there. Yeah. And then it gets swept up into this just social politic bullshit. Yeah. And then, of course, the corporate media. And I find it ironic. Maybe ironic is not the right word. But it's not. I just don't think it's correct to call it the mainstream media anymore because their numbers are incredibly bad. And they're not the mainstream. No one fucking listens to them or watches them except if you're in like a nursing home or or like if you're in an airport. You know what I mean? People still watch the local news. Like that's still a thing. Right. But as far as like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, people have seen the bullshit. And after, and in my opinion, just to put it quickly, after 20 years of the war on terror being lied us into a war that we should have never been involved in. From that, and then going into 4 years of saying that Trump is a Russia agent or whatever, when that never turned out to be true, and then it went into all the things that Fox News does to lobby against the left, and just because they're just as guilty of it as everybody else is.
It's a mess. The whole thing
it's all a fucking mess.
They all have,
So people are just like, you know what? We're done. We're done because now we have these people left wing, right wing, in the middle, these hyper famous podcast hosts that, you don't have to listen to the host, listen to the person they're speaking with because they are having access to these experts on specific fields. Yeah. And then and honestly, like people are right, in my opinion. They're right to get their news that way. There's something to be said for that because the media has had this monopoly on. I don't even think monopoly is a strong enough word. They've had this exclusive gatekeeping like society when it's come to information. But now with the internet being the way it is, I mean, I don't see, and I think it's a good thing. I don't see the internet being corralled in any kind of way that holistically supports the government, any side of a communist or socialistic society setup where it's like complete and total censorship, like Big Brother up top, saying what you're allowed to listen to, what you're allowed to have access to, who's blacklisted from talking to everybody. Like outside of moves like that, I don't think those will ever happen in this country just because of how our country's set. And it's the attitude of this country.
I really hope not. That'd be awful.
I don't think that'll ever happen. But because of that, we have people, and even just people, just because it's the internet, you don't have to go on a podcast. If you're an expert, you can just write an academic paper and you get it to the right people or the right independent. I mean, that's why we want to learn about the Twitter files. People like Matt Taibbi, who got in there, independent journalists with no real political motive. There's like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. Why are these things being suppressed right now? And then just blowing it up. But anyway, my point is like, DEI.
It's been weaponized.
It's been weaponized. Exactly.
Just like everything else that they take and spin and change into something else to move their own. Okay, so whoever they is and whatever their agenda may be, trying to move it forward, and it has been weaponized because I think like at the root of it, and that's why like I like that in the role that I was in and the work that I was doing and that framework that I carry with me. I call it Jedi because you think Star Wars before you think DEI, but also. The way I look at it is like, right, like Jedi are working to bring balance to the Force and bring the opinion and voice of those far out star systems and galaxies where you have people who can't fight in the Senate or whatever that structure may be. They can't bring that voice forward, and Jedi were working to bring that voice forward. If we're only like kind of looking at the, I'm not talking about the entire Star Wars universe because I'm not that in depth to it, but there's something to be said there. And I think like, that's why I said earlier, like people are always going to need advocacy. They're always going to need help. And it's not about pointing fingers and affirmative action and all this stuff that it's been twisted into. It's about like, how do we you and I like didn't learn financial literacy in public education in school.
Well, I mean, you can look at my bank account right now, and I don't know a whole lot about financial literacy.
And we haven't been supported with those tools. So like bringing access to that awareness and those tools to people so that they can figure that out for themselves, so they're not struggling with low credit scores and not able to access banking and credit and all these different financial options for them to then build and scale a project, a business, whatever it may be. Like, you need that. And they've done the same to us for legal education and health education. Like all those little TikToks that pop up about how to talk to your healthcare provider if they want to deny a test that you're asking for or some sort of support that you're asking for. You say, well, can you note that down in my file that I asked for this and that you refused to treat me? Because like, anyway, because there's all this kind of stuff, like even in the healthcare industry, there's like an assumption that like it's kind of, people of color can like handle more pain. There's a higher pain tolerance and a higher pain threshold of us being able to like deal with things, which is just like a really weird.
Wait, back up.
I know.
Wait, say that one more time.
That folks of color, or like specifically Black women and Black men, have a higher pain threshold. That's been like a belief in the medical community. But you can imagine that if you went through hundreds of years of slavery and having to deal with taking in a lot of punishment and torture, and if you've seen Roots, like those things, like there's these assumptions that have come out of like the medical community about how people handle pain and pain tolerance. Same thing.
There's no way that's practice though.
I think it's so not direct practice, but in the fact of like, if I come in expressing pain to a medical provider and they tell me, well, why don't you just take some Tylenol and forget about it? Like, you're going to be okay. Or like, yeah, like, well, I think maybe you're just being a little bit emotional, or maybe it's stress, or maybe it's this, and maybe it's that. And they don't take people's own words seriously on how they're feeling in their own physical body.
Right. But is there also the possibility that it's just shitty doctors you went to?
Oh, totally.
Because that's a real possibility. Because the thing about it like this, right? Because like, I don't go to the doctor very much. Thankfully, because I don't have to. Yeah. Very thankfully. But even when I do, and also with the VA healthcare, it's very tough to get an appointment.
Oh my goodness. Is that the system you're dealing in?
Oh, yeah.
Don't get me started there, man.
Yeah. It's the VA. But when I do get there, it's very quick. It's in and out. It's on to the next patient. Check the boxes, move on. Right.
That's bad healthcare practitioners, because they've also incentivized people who want to be in there for pay and not because they care about people.
Right, exactly. So that's where I was going to take it, where it's more when you find out that, and people I think are, I don't really want to like use the term like waking up to it, because to wake up to it would mean that you were told it at first, but you never really knew about it, or you never really like, took it in. Mm-hmm. But now people are finding out because of independent media, because of podcasts, because of whatever, that when your doctor prescribes you a medication, either them or the hospital administrators get a cut of that check. Mm-hmm. And whether it's because it's the individual unit they're moving, or if it's because the hospital got a shipment of the medication in, now they need to push it out so they can recoup or whatever it is. I'm not a finance guy, but I just know that's the basics of it. So when you start learning about that, it's like, oh yeah, so that makes sense why just pain pills just get pushed like no other. Oh, that's why aside from the whole reefer madness and the propaganda of all of that, why realistically marijuana will never get legalized federally, no, never. Because of big pharma. Mm-hmm. People always say it's because of the drug cartels, and I don't think and that would be an argument
too much of the war on drugs and too much policy that they would have to.
Right. Yeah. It would be a positive blow to the drug cartels to legalize marijuana, to put it into our pharmaceutical systems, but they won't do that because marijuana can alleviate a lot of pains and replace a lot of, not all of the opiates that we use, but a lot of them. Yeah. A significant amount. And even like now is more, and that's what I loved about JD Vance going on Rogan, because Rogan talked to him he was very detailed about it, talking about psychedelics with veterans and how that's helping.
Well, huge for PTSD treatment, right?
Yeah, it's huge for PTSD, depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
And being able to use that to, like, there's a ton of veterans that have gone down to Mexico, or have gone down to, I think, to either Venezuela or Argentina to do Ibogaine treatments. Oh, wow. Yeah, where they go down there and they do that, and it's absolutely fucking excruciating. But when they get out, like mentally, but when they get out of it, like there's a really good guy that runs a podcast. His name's a huge podcast now, Sean Ryan. He's a veteran, used to be a SEAL, CIA operator. He's done
fascinating.
Yeah, he's done all this shit, right? Been through some pretty horrible things. And he was a huge drinker, failed suicide attempt, very horrible things mentally for him. But he goes down to do Ibogaine, and he comes out of it and he's like, I just don't want to drink anymore.
Wow.
It's just not an urge that I have. And he was like a bottle of vodka a day alcoholic.
Wow. Just to kind of suppress and keep things away.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard of that treatment before, or that substance is an herb, whatever.
Yeah, it's a psychedelic.
Okay, yeah, it's like another psychedelic.
Okay, yeah, and then there's a lot of studies going on,
which is
right?
funny because I've heard of a lot of things. Okay, like wait a minute, like I don't know what you're talking about. Man, I've been out of the scene a long time.
But yeah, I believe it's a psychedelic, and then like stuff like MDMA, that being used for PTSD, or psilocybin for depression. I mean, I'm a small case study, but psychedelics helped me out a lot. Mushrooms calmed me down a lot. Like I'm still very naturally loud and all that stuff, but I am not quick to anger like I used to be.
Wow.
I'm not very
should I be looking into these?
Like I used to be very like animated, but like in a negative way. Very pessimistic, very like complaining a lot.
So you feel like that kind of opened up your opportunity for neural
yeah.
networks to kind of like look a different way.
It's just bigger picture stuff. Cool. It's like, hey, the shit you're complaining about right now, it's not that bad. You know what I mean?
Good for you.
Yeah, it only like, because I didn't do a lot of mushrooms, like at a time at least. Like it was like maybe over the course of, so I did it for the first time and at the very end of 2017. It was funny as fuck. It was right before I went to basic training. Me and my buddy took like 2 grams of mushrooms. We were sitting
You're lucky you still went after that. You're like, the world's alive. We're not going
Well, because I didn't get that high. I just got like super, it was my first time. So I was just like, whoa. And he was sprawled out. We were in this little apartment that I had. He's sprawled out on the futon. I'm in this giant chair and we've got my TV. This is how broke we were. We had my TV, and our TV stand were 2 milk crates that I stole from work. and we had Spotify casting onto the TV, and the artwork was really cool. And we put on the song, we're listening to it. And he goes, hey man, this song's been on, like, it's been repeating like 3 or 4 times. You should change the song. I'm like, all right, sounds good. I pull out my phone. I'm like, dude, we've been listening to this same song on repeat for 4 hours.
Oh my goodness. Yep. That'll do it.
But then I would only take mushrooms after I got back. I would take them like 2, maybe 3 times a year just to have a good time and just fuck around with my buddies and just get super stoned or whatever, or super high. But then the end of it was Halloween of 2020. Me and my buddies, we decided to take 8 grams each.
Oh dear.
And we didn't know that was a lot.
Oh dear.
Yeah, we didn't know. And it was just a horrible ego death. Absolutely. Absolutely. It was excruciating. It was like, because I'm Christian. So I fully believe in hell, and I fully believe in that. And the best definition in the Bible of hell is the absence of God. And that's what that felt like.
Oh goodness.
But I think it was like,
Scary.
obviously because of how excruciating that place is, that has to be like a half of a percentage. You know what I mean? But like, I felt a little bit of it. And I remember coming out of it like, okay, life is hard, but it's not as bad. And then still to this day, nothing has happened to me as horrible as that experience. I was like, whoa. So stuff like that really just, because I think, a lot of it may be some chemical rewiring, but I think a lot of it's perspective change too.
Yeah. That
people just don't really, and that's why, like, when you look back at like the 60s and the 70s, when psychedelics were super huge in our American culture during the Vietnam War, when people were like, it's all because, for me growing up, it was, they're hippies, they're this, that, and the other. But then now that I'm a full-fledged adult thinking for myself, I'm like, no, those guys had an experience on some significantly less strong mushrooms, probably. But even they had the experience of like, hey, war's kind of bad.
Yeah, why are we killing each other? This is hurting our souls and our spirits and humanity. Why are we?
It's not, hey, this is not good.
Yeah.
And of course, the military-industrial complex is like, no.
Yeah, you can't have people saying that.
This is good for business.
Trying to run you can't. And that's, I think, takes me back, and like I've had my experiences as well, and I started kind of like early, like I tell people, like been there, done that. It was like high school, college, and started in high school, right? So by the time I hit college, I was already hitting like the end of my experiences with a lot of that stuff, just because that's, you know, being in Santa Fe, that's like all there is to do when you're when you're that age. Just like, oh, what are we gonna do for fun? We're gonna do some stuff. But it just takes you back to like the systems that we're in that have been created over the last like couple hundred years, or even if we're like just looking at the United States, like those systems weren't designed with like humanity and ethics and collaboration and community in mind. That's not what they were designed for. They were designed to kind of control and siphon away money from certain populations.
Well,
and control,
what systems?
Like, so financial system, healthcare system, education system. Like even if you just want to look at like those three.
Especially the education one.
Like that's not what it's designed for.
Especially the education one.
And they're designed like with flaws. So when you introduce like ways of thought and thinking that are counter to how people have been used to navigating, it like puts everybody on edge.
Well, what kills me is when you hear these stories, and they're still happening, where you hear these stories of kids being put on psychotropic medications for like ADHD.
Ruining their growth and development.
Yeah, because they won't sit still in class. Okay, maybe the kid has a neurological disability. Okay, maybe. Let's just say maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Or they're just a kid.
Oh, yeah. Maybe they're a fucking 10-year-old.
Right.
And they shouldn't be sitting still for 8 to 9 hours a day.
Imagine.
With 30 days of yard time. You know what I mean? Like when you really put it down, like,
right.
And when you look at the way that education was set up, because we stole it from the Germans, so that's why like kindergarten. It's a very German sounding, it's a very German sounding word because it fucking is. We stole the education system the way we know it now from the Germans. So, and when you look at how the classrooms were set up in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, that's exactly how it is now.
Yeah,
bunch of kids in a grid. All looking at the one point of authority,
right?
And it's all, and there's like school is a good thing. Children should be learning basic things, yeah. But maybe we should just take a crack at a different system,
right? Or maybe we should just introduce some different things. Like, what if we taught kids about like self-care and self-soothing, or how to do emotional regulation, or did introduce them to financial literacy early? What if they were looking at nutrition from a standpoint of like, not this is bad for you, but here is the entire scope of things, and like there's other stuff that's good for you. There's just,
well, the big thing is the salt versus fat. How there's a big lobby from, I want to say it was when Monsanto really started getting huge, how a bunch of those people paid off doctors to write. Do you know about this?
I mean, all I can tell you is that I was marching on Monsanto in high school, right? Like printing out flyers like, this food system, Monsanto's going to ruin everything. No, it was against net neutrality. Like there's so many things that like I could. Like,
so I want to say it was Monsanto back in like the 60s or 70s or something like that. But big corporation, for lack of a better term, big sugar, pretty much. They paid off a bunch of leading scientists at the time to write papers in these leading journals to say, hey, sugar isn't bad for you. Fat is.
Right.
Fat is horrible for you. This is what's going to kill you and your kids. Sugar's not bad, whatever. Right. And yes, we do know now that trans fats, not good. Processed saturated fats, not good. Correct.
So sugar like turns into fat once it's in the body, but they can put 100% fat free on a pound of sugar. Right?
Exactly. It's stuff like that. It's just stuff like how sugar and processed sugars are leading, obviously, to diabetes, but to now we're finding out they're leading to neurological diseases later in life, like Alzheimer's and dementia. I was like, oh, yeah, maybe. And then you see why a bunch of these people over the last like 10 years, like Jordan Peterson's a great example of it, where he was having a horrible autoimmune disease that was actively killing him. He switches to an all carnivore diet, meat and salt, and it fixes him. Same thing with his daughter. I think his daughter now eats a little bit of cheese and like a little bit of like, I haven't listened to her podcast in a few years, but they switched from like the normal stuff they were eating to a carnivore diet, and just all their symptoms went away. These horrible rashes, this horrible fatigue, horrible brain fog, a severely suppressed immune system, gone.
Well, I mean, yeah, because in the United States alone, just like the sugar and like high fructose corn syrup intake, like we can't, it's really hard to get away from. Like,
Yeah.
you see me in the grocery store, like looking at the back of all the ice cream. I'm like, is there one that like, can I just have regular sugar in my ice cream or like regular milk? Like, just trying to find the one that doesn't have high fructose and all these other weird additives in it. Like, I feel like I'm not asking that much. Maybe I should just take it to the co-op, but like I haven't done that yet. So sometimes I want what I want and I don't want to
go down to the Voodoo Magic like... grocery store.
It's just the fact is that we've been misled in a lot of ways from marketing and media. And I think that there just needs to be a return of like asking ourselves what we need and what we need to intake and like what's going to work for us. Because there's people who can eat a lot of sugar and it doesn't cause them problems, but that's not true for everyone.
Well, a lot of things aren't true for everyone. That's like in the holistic medicine thing.
Yeah.
That's why it's the thing about holistic health. The things that are going to work for me within probably a 15 to 20% margin of error aren't going to work for you.
Right.
The common denominators will. A healthy caloric intake, staying hydrated, all that stuff. Good baseline. But I know that I can eat all meat and all like high fat, high protein, right? I know that I can eat that and operate perfectly fine. I get a little agitated, but I operate perfectly fine. But maybe if you did that or somebody else did that, their body starts fucking breaking down.
Right.
It's like, no, but at the end of the day, we do need help. Your brain needs carbohydrates.
Yeah. Carbohydrates are like in a large like array of different vitamins and minerals and nutrients that like you don't get from if you're just going to eat a bunch of sugar all the time or only eat ultra processed fast food. Like, and that's what I say, like, cause like I talk a lot of crap on my Instagram stories sometimes talking about like the processed food, stop eating this chicken. It's all added. I eat it myself. Right. But I just try to like, do. You can't not, I mean, unless I'm going to move somewhere and really like go off grid and disconnect myself entirely and not be consuming any of that stuff. It's really hard in day-to-day life to get away from that. So can I find a balance with it? Can I like add something else in? Or am I just not eating like as much of it? What can I do so that I'm okay? Because I've had experiences where I've stopped eating fast food for like extended periods of time and I can think a lot more clearly. Or it's just something then like the one time I eat fast food because I think it's going to taste really good. And it like my whole mood kind of changed.
It kills you
within the following week. And I was like, holy crap, like there's those heavy thoughts again. Like what's going on? Why am I depressed out of nowhere? Like I don't really get it. It's not adding up. And it was like these dietary changes that sometimes we just don't realize that what we're consuming is like the culprit for that. Or people, you don't want to believe it until you experience it for yourself.
Well, the big eye-opening thing like for me was I did a bodybuilding competition a few years ago, and it was like, all right, 2 cheat days a week, and then eventually none, but like sticking to the strict diet, training regimen. Now, granted, towards the end of it, where I'm like eating 900 calories a day, just shredding myself full, like getting rid of the water, all of that. Yeah, that's not healthy for you. But this like sweet spot of about 8 weeks where it was like 2200 to 2000 calories a day. And it was, no, like not a lot of carbs in the beginning of the day, but a lot of protein and a lot of fat in the beginning to start your digestive system properly and to start all of that, get the enzymes going, and then get carbs later in the day to help the brain and good carbs. But I found that fucking potatoes just, that is just like the most pure fuel for my engine. I just go and go and go. So then when I did like, and I don't think it's controversial to say, fast food does taste good. Some of it tastes fuck. Whataburger
designed to taste so good.
Yeah, it's made in the lab to taste fucking great. You know what I mean? But all the oils that it's made with and the way that it's processed, like it's gonna clog up the engine a little bit. But it's not bad every now and again. But if you're going on the standard American diet, where it's just a consistent thing.
Right.
Then you start running into issues where it's like, hey, you might have to do a whole engine swap on this one. Like that's why you start. I mean, not to be completely morbid about it, but that's why a huge side effect of prolonged diabetes that doesn't get not cured, but helped. You lose a fucking foot. People eat so much food that fucks up their heart. You have to get open heart surgery. You get a valve changed out.
Yeah.
Like you literally have parts of your car
putting like bad fuel in the engine.
Yeah. You're putting diesel in a gas tank. Like you're gonna fuck yourself up. And that's one of the things that excites me about RFK coming in, to at least bring fucking at a bare minimum, just bringing awareness to it, where it's like, hey, this shit probably isn't good for you, and it's certainly not good for you if you're a kid and you're in these development stages where the brain is literally taking any nutrients that it can to fully form itself. Yeah. 'Cause that's what's crazy about the human body. I think the simplest way to put it, it's almost like it has an idea of where it should be, but it's on you to get it there. Like, it's on your brain to get it there.
That's true.
But if you consistently, or if kids are given horrible foods over and over and over, it's not going to get there. And and with, quite frankly, with inflation being the way it is, and how much, I mean, fuck, like I remember I got food at McDonald's a couple weeks ago, and it was like $13 for a McDonald's meal. Like, $13?
You're like, wait a minute.
Wait, what happened to the $1 McChickens? You know what I mean?
Right.
So now it's like, okay, now that's getting pricey. Spend a little bit of money at the grocery store, get good ingredients, and take an extra 30 minutes at home and make your food.
Right.
You're going to feel better. And if you spend all that money at the grocery store, you actually end up saving money in the long run.
You sure do. Sure do, because that's where my budget goes monthly, is like food, when I don't take the time to make it for myself. And man, the RFK rhetoric is getting interesting, because I was interested in looking at him as a candidate pre where we are now.
Yeah.
And
me too.
I'm like, if anyone would make just some small changes to the food system and what we're doing in the United States, because I've left the country a handful of times this year, and like the feelings and sensations that I experience when I'm eating food out of the country are so different than what happens when I'm coming home and I'm trying to find something quick and I'm just gonna go and put up with it. And then, like, I remember when I came back in town and I was like, oh, I need a good green chili cheeseburger, and I went to Blake's, and then the bread was like plastic on the top, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, I'm just trying to be home. I'm just trying to like eat something that resonates with like who I am. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, all I want is some like a good green chili cheeseburger. Like, is that so much to ask for that like I can't even get it with regular bread? I'm gonna have to go make this thing at home, and like I don't really want to make it at home. I just got home. I don't have time. And I think that, you know, I saw an article in the New York Times today talking about, I don't know if it's today or in the last week, talking about the seed oil claim, right? Which, like, in my understanding, this is before homeboy joined the cabinet and all this crap and whatever else, but I was already under the impression that seed oils were bad for you, because the original use for seed oils was like as engine lubricant and machine lubricant, and then they didn't really touch that part in the article at all, didn't even bring it up. And I was just like, this is why you get people who don't want to read what's going on in mainstream media, because like and I still read it because I have to be educated and I have to know what's going on. So I have to do like this dual thing where I'm like listening to the podcast and building my own opinion, but I'm also looking at what society is saying because of the way that I am in my current role and stuff. Like I need to know what's going on both sides. And there's just pieces that get like left out of the conversation and it doesn't make sense. And I am hopeful that we will find some reasons to at least have hope or confidence in some of the changes that the incoming administration can make. And I'm not trying to, like, you know what I mean? I'm not.
Well, but think about it like this. Like, what's the alternative, though?
If we don't, that's my thing. If you don't look for the good and you don't try to see that glass half full, then you're going to find all the reasons in the world to be depressed, give up on life. You don't want this. You're mad at that. Everything's going to be like this. Everything is falling apart. And like, if everything's falling apart, for me personally, I don't have a damn reason to be here right now. I need to find something that I can hold on to that's going to bring me inspiration and invigoration and resilience, because getting sad about it and depressed about it, like I've been there, done that. And if that was the case and the world was just going to go into like a very dark place and zombie apocalypse and all the stuff and the world, civil war, this, that, and the other, and it's like, then why the hell are we, for me, why the hell am I here? I don't want to be here if there's nothing to look forward to. So even in like the darkest of situations that a lot of people think that we're in right now, like, you have to find the light, because if you don't find light in that situation, then you're gonna like fall into a dark void. And who wants to do that? Sorry, I don't know if I'm talking.
No, you're completely right. And it's there's next to no use in being 100% pessimistic. And honestly, that's 100%. That's one of my favorite quotes out of Star Wars is when Obi-Wan says that only the Sith deals in absolutes.
Right. I mean, it's the truth, man. I'm trying to tell you.
And I think that applies to everyone, no matter where you live on the political spectrum, right? Wherever you're at, because the best way I've heard it put was a couple weeks ago, Rogan said he was politically homeless. And that's how I feel. Where I'm like, I see things on the right that I agree with, but I see a lot that I don't. And I look at the left, and I'm like, well, there's still some things over there I agree with, but it's muddled down by a lot of things that I don't agree with. And so I'm kind of in the middle. And
it
I
feels
think
like there's no middle to exist anymore, which is like very annoying.
Well, I think that most Americans exist in the middle until it's election time, and you feel like you have to pick sides. And even if, and that's one of the things that helped Trump win the first time, and I think that's what largely helped to win a lot this time, was that you have a lot of these, like, I think the best way to put it is closeted Trump voters, where they will say, oh, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. Maybe I'll vote this way, or I'm not too sure. Or people just flat out say, I'm not going to vote for Trump. I'm going to vote whatever. I might sit this one out, but they go to the polls and they're like, that might be the way to go, because I'm kind of sick of what this side is giving me. But yeah, to be completely pessimistic about it, the new administration, whether it was right or left, because that's how a lot of the people on the right were when Biden got elected. And now, unfortunately, there are a lot of things that came true about that, but there are a lot of things that weren't. Right. So it does you no good.
What's I said, like, they had do such a good job distracting us as a nation of getting so wrapped up in the presidential election that, like, where does that in the direct scheme of things, and I say that very nuanced in a way, because I know that there's people who have very real fear of being deported and losing family members, losing loved ones, losing people who are close to them, and dealing with that situation. So, like,
well, what I would say to that, though, because I understand that, right? But what I would say to that is, remember that, now granted, there's a lot of bureaucratic nonsense that was put towards Trump that he just couldn't wade through and couldn't get a lot done. But he didn't finish the border wall in the first 4 years. He didn't get health care done.
The wall was already started long before he got it. Anyway.
Right. No, you're completely right. No, you're completely right. You're completely right. You are completely right, but he still didn't finish it. Right? That's the point, though, right? You're completely correct about that. That's another way you can piss off a lot of Trump supporters, too. You can just be like, hey, listen, there already was one, and, but anyway, but for the sake of the argument, right? So he didn't finish the border wall the first time. And they're going to be a lot stronger on immigration this time. This is true. And I think he has a lot of people that are ready, gung-ho, ready to go. However, I do think that it's safe to say that if you are someone that is here, that regardless of how you got here, but I think, especially with somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy in the administration, I really think that the way they're going about it in a very pragmatic way, where it's like, are you providing something? Are you a net positive to this country?
Right.
I think that's the way they're going about it. Like, I think they're going to spend the first, really not even the first bulk. I think they're going to spend the entirety of the 4 years, because mass deportations, they've gamed it out. It's scary, but it's not practical, right?
That's what I'm kind of thinking too. And we're in a state too where, like, our governor has already said that, like, she's good. There's a lot of Democratic states that say that they're not going to stand for it. Right.
Well,
and I don't know how all that works.
Well, right. But what scares me is is somewhere in California, I think it was a mayor that said that they're going to turn their city into a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants. Now, that's a far pendulum swing to the left. That's not good, because you're right. You are going to have people that are good people, just want to be here. They already have jobs. They have a life. But you're also going to have that we've seen already a lot of criminals that take advantage of that. Like, why do you think that when Biden said, hey, we're going to let you across the border as long as you have an infant with you, why do you think a ton of infants started showing up at the border? Because they're using it as, like, they're using our policies against us.
Yeah, and
that's a real thing.
There's a weakness in there even when you talk about war strategy, because there's a thing in Western warfare where, like, we don't deal in women and children in civilian areas. So why do you think that when we're looking at war criminals on the other side, and then they use women, children in civilian areas in order to then, because Americans won't touch it, because we have this we take the moral high ground. And that's everything is a double-edged sword in that way. Yeah. And I think that it's it's a very scary time, and New Mexico is a sanctuary state, and we do a ton of work around helping immigrant and newcomer and refugee communities. It's just who we are and what we do. We're one of the last states to get nationhood, predominantly because we were a black and brown state, and they're like, you don't really fit our vision for the United States. Like, that's a lot of what that back and forth was about. So we know that history a lot deeper than some other states do. And I think that there's just a line, there's a really interesting line that you have to figure out how to walk, because there's a lot of people here who are contributing like economically, positively, and bringing good things into this nation. And there's always like, there's a bad apple no matter where you look. And it's the strategies and ways that then that's why you can't use really like blanket policy. In the work I do, we call it targeted universalism, because you can't take the same approach across the board. You have to treat things on a case-by-case basis, but when you look at the capacity of some of those three-letter agencies, like they don't have that type of capacity.
Exactly.
So they do kind of like this one and done and one and all, and that's not necessarily what you can do. And it's a really weird time for people, but I think, because I lost my original point, but it's like people get so swept up in wanting to argue about these topics, politics, et cetera, when I was like on the beach for 3 weeks across the entire globe in like South Asia, I like wasn't thinking about politics.
Yeah.
Like living and breathing and being in an environment where people were like guns this and abortion that and healthcare this and immigrant that, like it was just non-existent. And it was like, holy shit, like it's quiet. And I'm like, doesn't matter, because like, yes, I get it. Those are people's real lived experiences and they're dealing with it, but like they do such a good job. Like, does it really matter? Or does what matter, is it the community that you're around? Is it the business that you're building for yourself? Is it that your family is safe? And like, what steps can you take in your day-to-day life where you're not letting like these federal level things get in the way of your peace and your sanity? Because that's
sanity.
I think
sanity is the right word to use, because people do go insane over it, and because obviously policies matter and stuff like that. But then it's also, again, it's been, you said it earlier, it's been weaponized. And thank you for bringing up the fact you went overseas again, because it's funny. Like, so you eat pasta here, and at least for me, you eat pasta here, I'm in a coma for 5 hours. I've never been overseas to like, well, I've been to Germany, but it was for like military shit. But like going to like my friends that have been to Europe and they go to like Italy and all that type of stuff, like they eat pasta there and they're not bloated.
I had pasta in London the night before I came back, huge plate of ravioli, these massive in-house made raviolis, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be stuck on the couch. And then I was out walking around, no bloating, no weirdness, no lactose response, no tiredness. And it was like, I was fueled and ready to go for the next like 4 hours. And I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, I was just mad. And I came back and if you like talk to my friends, like I was mad about the food here for like a solid month when I got back. So I was like, the food in London didn't do this. The food in London didn't do this. Because it's like the truth. And it's just weird.
But about the, what I was going to say about immigration. So I think it's going to be, they're going to spend the 4 years focusing on criminals. That's what they're going to be focusing on. And not only because it's the easiest way to do it, but I think it's going to show the most change, and it's one of the most quantifiable things that will make people happy. Like this idea that people have that that the government is going to be running down the street, sweeping people into vans and driving them down across the border.
I've heard fear about that around them, like going into schools and rounding people up. And I was
it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And because even if, let's just say, because even that's not plausible. What I was going to say is, like, even if there was like something that Trump tried to sign into order to make that happen, it wouldn't pass. Right. There are even Republicans that are like, hey, wait a minute, we can't just grab people off the street. Wait a minute.
Hell to the hell no.
Can't
what are we? Like, we're
not... because we've been through that and that's why mental institutions went away. And I think it's a decent argument that they should come back, not in the same way that they were, but like I think it's a good argument. Like, hey,
well, people can't get treatment outside of unless you have money or you're in jail.
Right, exactly. Mainly prison, right? That's the big one. And so that's why the absence of mental institutions, it's not a coincidence. Things don't happen in a vacuum. Like, it's not a coincidence that that right-wing mental institutions and not psychotic institutions, but psychological institutions went away. Like asylums, when those went away, that homelessness skyrocketed. That's not a coincidence. Yeah. So But one of the big reasons why some of those did go away, other than the horrible malpractices that were happening in those institutions, is that there were people driving around late at night, grabbing crazy people off the street and throwing them in these institutions. Now, granted, you can't fucking do that. A, B, you certainly can't do that in today's modern era.
Right.
You can't get away with that.
Yeah.
Trump will get impeached like that.
Yeah, no. We're not standing for that.
He can't do that, right? So and that's for any group of anybody, whether you're an illegal immigrant or someone who could possibly be deemed an illegal immigrant. That's not going to happen to you in the same way that minorities aren't going to get swept up into a van and thrown into prison either. It's not going to fucking happen.
Yeah.
And again, I think just the corporate media has really brainwashed people into this fear porn that these crazy things are going to happen, and they're just fucking not going to. But I don't know. I just think it's Trump has, and his administration, and I like the people. And this got articulated very well. I think I was listening to an interview. It was between Jordan Peterson and Piers Morgan that came out on Saturday, Sunday. And I think the way he put it was very good. Is Trump is a very egotistical person, and he's a very he's a performer. He's very
He's not the first actor we've had in the White House. He's not the first actor
he's not.
we've had in
no,
the
he's
White
not.
House.
No, Reagan was, right? Wasn't he? Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, but he put his name on a fucking building. He's put his name on a failed university, on stakes, on fucking everything, right? Mm-hmm. He's that guy. But when you see the people he's surrounded himself with, these aren't not impressive people. Mm-hmm. Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek Ramaswamy, RFK. Mm-hmm. These are people that have been about like the thing that they talk about. They're very much like Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. And I don't agree with Bernie Sanders on much, but what I do like about him is that the things he talks about now, he's been talking about that since he's been in politics.
Right. His messaging didn't change.
Yeah, he's been on that. And these people, Tulsi Gabbard, she's anti-regime change wars. She's very much like, hey, we should have a military, but very anti-regime change wars. Mm-hmm. Elon Musk and Vivek, they're all about efficiency in corporations. They're all about, hey, what do we need to do to make this company run, but we're not spending a ton of money to make this as accessible as possible, make it as successful as possible, but we're not clogging up the streams with a bunch of nonsense, right? They're on that. RFK, huge on the environment. Huge on seed oils, food dyes, toxic poisons, vaccines. Like my whole thing with RFK, because I haven't finished the whole book, but I read a little bit out of The Real Anthony Fauci. And it's a fucking fascinating read.
Yeah.
It is. And what's crazy about it, because most books are formatted. You know what I mean? They usually have like margins where it's like little space up here, little spaces here, little spaces here. All the text is centered. That thing's like a manifesto.
Oh, goodness.
Like it is top to bottom page of words. Wow. And then the back, maybe there's like 30 or 40 pages worth of just references.
Wow.
Where it's like everything he's talking about is footnoted, and he's like, check me. And my whole thing is like, listen, if that book was called The Real Noah Vargas, and there's that many inflammatory things said about me, about what I've done in different vaccine researches, AIDS researches, all these things that I've allowed to go wrong, or at least been complicit in,
right?
And any of that was false, I would have sued the pants off of that guy.
Right.
I would have taken him for everything the Kennedy estate is worth. But Anthony Fauci hasn't. So what does that tell you?
He's also supposed to be under investigation in the Netherlands, right? So
he is under investigation.
Lots of thoughts.
He is,
and a lot of names that because there's some people who are super triggered by the cabinet that is in process and being appointed, and I think
I'm so glad Matt Gaetz is gone. How funny is it?
I'm just telling you, I haven't really been paying attention to it, and I know there's a lot of people who are super frustrated by Elon Musk's background in particular, but it's just weird because there's a fact here where he's built multi-billion-dollar companies time and time again and has a brilliant mind. You might not agree with the background and the upbringing and the society that he was raised in, which is a post-apartheid South Africa.
Yeah.
Trust fund. Of course, there's a lot of that there, but I think also politics has been a dirty game for such a long time that having people who are kind of outside of that space it's a little bit refreshing. And I don't want to get canceled. You know what I mean? But it's a little bit refreshing to have people that are not people who have just already been hand-selected, hand-picked for the places and positions that they're going into. And I think Americans and I think individuals are kind of tired of that. It's the same reason why people are searching for authenticity and like intention behind what they're putting their time, money, and attention towards. Like people are super, well, for the most part, I think that there's a group of people who are getting tired. And then there's some people who just want to space out and ignore everything, right? And they'll like eat whatever entertainment is being popped up.
They want to see the next Marvel movie. They want to see
that they're going to watch Pinky Doll for like how long? Like, is she gonna do something different? Like, that was a trip to me that like we all got caught up on that piece alone. And I do have a question. Like, do you do introductions? Like, did we do that? We just launched into conversation.
We just got right into conversation.
Okay. No, cool. Yo, it's been crazy.
Well, that's what I love about doing a podcast is like there's no format you have to hold yourself to.
Thank you. Because I'm not used to that because I do work in government. I'm like, well, we didn't start the meeting. We didn't do introductions. We didn't do a little.
Well, no, yeah. There's not. What are we
gonna get into today?
Well, there's not a boardroom or agents outside the door. Right, business agents, they're like, oh, you can't talk about this. Oh, you can't say, or you can't say that, or they said to not. Like it's one thing. Excuse me. Like I sent out the questionnaire. Thank you again for sending that back. It's one thing. Like that's why part of the reason why I send that out, just to get, especially somebody I haven't met and conversed with before. It's
we roam in the same circles, but not in the same space.
You're a very talented musician, by the way.
Oh,
very, very talented.
Thank you.
But. You know, I do want to get a feel for the person, and then just also like it gets it right out in front where it's like, okay, if you don't want to talk about this certain thing, or if you don't want to talk about that, this, that, and the other, it's like, okay, the last thing I'm interested in is a gotcha bullshit. There's no gain in. I mean, there is a weird clickbaity gain in that, but that's not why I'm here.
Right.
I think that's very silly, and I mean, not even at its worst, but in its nature, it's just mean. You know what I mean? It's just fucking mean.
It's like a weird manipulation.
Like, why?
Like even if you watch like like if you're watching like Dateline, and I think I'm sorry, so right, because the interviewer is always like, wow, that must have been so hard for you. Was that like really hard? Was it re-traumatizing to be in that situation? Yeah, and you're like, what the hell are you doing to this person right now that you're like asking them that? Like, yeah.
Well, my whole thing's like nobody speaks like that. Nobody speaks like that in real life. And that's a big reason why I started doing the podcast too, was because like I saw how like mainstream, I've always been interested in like, I don't know, I'm not too sure why, but think about this a lot actually. Maybe it was because he's not in my life at all anymore, but when I was like a little kid, my dad was really into Charlie Rose, if you know who that is. He was an old interviewer.
Okay.
And all he did was he would sit down, he had his own show that's like an hour long, and he would sit down with people in this blacked out room and just talk to people. And I always thought it was super boring, but there was something kind of captivating about two people in a black room speaking. Like it was just very interesting. But then like growing up, getting into politics, I would watch the debates, and even before Trump was in politics, I would watch the debates as like a middle schooler and a high schooler, and I would just be like, okay, I don't know anything about any of these topics. Because again, I'm not even an adult yet, but like I'm looking at this and I'm like, how are you going to answer climate change, the war on terrorism, the economy, even removing yourself from like the housing crash in 2008? Not even just that, but just like a normal economy.
Right. How
are you going to add anything significant to that in 60 seconds? That is so fucking ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. So then I grew up, I end up going on a deployment, I come back, I want to do something like, oh, well, this Joe Rogan guy seems to be pretty popular, and all he's doing is talking to people. Yeah. Well, that's kind of neat.
Right.
And then like here we are. But I don't know. It's it's just very interesting times. And yeah, it's just since you're very into health and you're very into like, you know, seed oils and all these processed food.
I'm into all the things.
No, since you should really check out The Real Anthony Fauci, because it's interesting. I want to finish it because it is. I will say, because it's very much, it's worded in it's written and worded.
The size of a Bible, is it not?
It's
like
pretty
a lot
big.
Of pages in there.
It's pretty big.
Like,
but
my book's short, right?
But it's also, it's a dry read. Like, it's interesting, it's captivating, but it's written like a scientific article, which quite frankly it should be, right?
Yeah.
If you're making accusations, if you're making accusations, not even accusations, if you're just bringing points forward, because that's where kind of my brain fits most of the time.
Some people want the logic and the analytical like perspective to it. They do want an academic paper if you're going to quote prove something.
Yeah, well, and that's where my brain sits a lot of times. Like, I'm not even trying to call people out. At this point, I'm just asking questions. And then when people start saying, well, you can't ask that, well, why not? Why can't I ask about why, like, yeah, exactly.
Well, I was also wondering, like, remember when in school it was like, you can't ask why, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, whatever.
No, that's a real thing, right? Because again, that's the older generation, and then beyond them, it's the boomers that are very much set in the traditional American way of like, this is how we do things, this is how things are, this is how it'll always be. And it's like, well,
why?
But you're saying a little bit earlier about like people that are outside of government coming in. It's like, well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Right, and I think that's why, like, I frustrate people at work because, like, I haven't been in the job for 20 years. So, like, you telling me, like, this is the way it's always been done doesn't really sit well with me because I'm like, well, you're not saying that
it's not working.
It can't be done differently. You're saying this is the way it's always been done.
So we're going to do it.
And I'm not trying to change policy. I'm not trying to circumvent rules. I'm not trying to do anything, quote, different. I'm just trying to look at, like, making adjustments to the way that we've been doing things that obviously hasn't been working.
Well, it's not like, okay, we all want more or less as Americans, balloon that out, right? We all want the same result, more or less. We want to live a decent life. People want to live. We want to live within our means. We want to have a family, whatever that looks like. We want to have a good circle of friends. We want a job that we don't completely hate, and we want enough time and energy to do the things that we love. Yeah. Generally speaking, that's all. That's I mean.
All
like,
what we want. That's what we should be fighting for, right? Because I think the way we get there, we have more in common.
Exactly, this is 100% correct. But it's also like, how do we get there? And the way that we've been getting there, there are some parts that work. There are things in this country. There's a lot of things in this country that work, but there's also a good number of things that don't. So can we just try looking at things that different? And again, like with Elon Musk, like, yes, you can levy criticism against anybody. Right? We're all human. We're all human. Yeah. However, there's been this thing in politics really since Kennedy got assassinated where it's like the people that you want in government aren't the ones, generally speaking, aren't the ones in government. And the people that you do want in government that get into government get out very soon because they're sick of the shit. Like, and Tulsi Gabbard is a great example of that. She got in, became the Democratic superstar. She became one of the main people of the DNC. She rose very quickly in the ranks, very respectable individual. Yeah. But the moment she challenges Hillary Clinton, the moment she calls out Kamala Harris, what is it? Same attack they gave Trump. She's a Russian agent. And they just hammered her with Russian agent, because she wrote an article, or not even an article, like she wrote like this think piece that got published in Russia Times like 10 years ago. And then she went and spoke with Assad in 2017. No, I'm sorry, maybe it was 17. 16, 17? Anyway, she spoke with Assad, one of our enemies. Like, okay. Maybe she's doing these things with nefarious intentions. Or, and this is something I liked about Trump a lot too, don't you want to speak with our enemies? Think about any crucial time.
Remember when I said you have to be able to share space with people who don't share the same views as you in order to get anywhere?
Any crucial time where we came to the brink of even just nuclear apocalypse, what happened? Our leaders spoke to the enemies. That's what Kennedy did. He spoke to them, like, hey, what the fuck are you guys doing? Get those missiles out of Cuba. We can't fucking do this. That's always, it's conversing with people on the opposite end. To figure out why things are the way they are. And again, when she got hit with that, she's like, you know what, I'm fucking done. And now you have her, again, traditionally Democratic individuals, her, RFK, Elon, Democrats.
It goes the same for celebrities too, which, like, not to say, because there's been people doing terrible stuff. So we're not going to go into that. But then people who want to, like, push back against that, like, what a terrible pop reference. But like with Justin Bieber, right? And then when he started, he's going crazy, he's doing this, and it's like, but now he's Christian and he's given his life to God and he really just goes about his own business, but we like painted him into like this terrible thing because he wasn't wanting to deal with the bullshit.
Or maybe he was going through some very horrible things with a certain music mogul. That we don't know yet. It's all alleged.
Right.
It's all alleged, but signs are pointing to he was a horrible victim, or a victim of horrible things, to Sean Combs. to Diddy. And just like in the same way that, I mean, there's that very infamous story that came out when the Harvey Weinstein stuff was coming out of Gwyneth Paltrow, where she was about to get assaulted by Harvey Weinstein, and Brad Pitt, her ex-boyfriend at the time, went to Harvey Weinstein. He's like, hey, you touch her, I kill you.
Yeah.
And he backed off. He's still a very horrible person, but it's like, yeah, what would have, now granted, Gwyneth Paltrow's off selling goop or whatever it is, and that's strange. But, you know, she could have been fucked up like, I mean, she like like Britney Spears.
Right.
Now we're understanding why she had a fucking psychotic break.
Poor woman.
Right? People like Britney Spears. Have you heard the one that really is killer to me is the Paris Hilton story?
No.
Do you know about that? Okay, so there's a documentary. I want to say it's free on YouTube. Let me see. So there's a documentary about Paris Hilton that came out. I want to say it was right before the pandemic, and it was where it's goodness. It's all about her upbringing. And
I mean, I can't imagine, right? Hilton, like the Hilton, just like the amount of wealth that would be in that family and the amount of people that you would be exposed to.
Yeah, this is Paris. You should really watch that. Like
I like going down rabbit holes here.
Her parents, at the age of like 8, 9 years old, without her knowing, maybe she was a teenager. She might have been a teenager. But anyway, not a fucking adult. Not that this would be good for an adult to go through, but during her developmental years, her parents sign her up without her knowing to this military school. Representatives from the military school break into her home at like 3 a.m., rip her out of her bed.
What the hell?
And bus her to this fucking military school. No contact with her parents, no contact with her family. And then just put her through the rigorous whatever it was at this military school. And then, yeah, you come out of that probably a bit fucked up. And then you're living this like kids.
And put her back into a lavish lifestyle, though?
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
But then kids growing up in a spotlight like that, it's not like what? It's
not healthy.
What child celebrities came out of that unscathed? Like Hillary Duff, maybe, but she got out of it early, relatively. Like Hillary Duff came out pretty okay.
I always think sometimes of like the Sprouse twins, one of them, because one of them's back in movies right now too. But I'm like, they kind of like took their break.
Yeah. Well, the other whichever one of them was in Riverdale, he makes some pretty poor acting decisions.
Oh,
but you know, it is what it is. We've all seen that clip. I'm weird. I don't fit in. It's like, all right, dude, maybe read the script and ask to offer some notes.
Hey, I was on the Riverdale train until they got to like season 4, and then I was like, how did this become some sort of RPG Dungeons and Dragons meets Sabrina? Like, I was like, yo, okay, no, like, never mind. Let me stop consuming.
But like, how many of those kids come out of that okay?
You can't come out of that okay.
And then you look at someone like Michael Jackson, where it's like, all right, he was severely abused by Joe Jackson, abused more than any of his brothers were. He was, when he didn't perform well, he was put in a fucking furnace. People don't know that. Yeah, one of the punishments that Joe Jackson had for Michael was he would stick him in a furnace and have him just sitting there.
How is that going to actually like heal or help someone perform better? Like, and then you wonder why.
Well, he was
your growth is then emotionally stunted.
Yeah.
And then you've only ever, like, you didn't, when you're experience that kind of trauma, you get, like, they call it, like, age regression sometimes, right? Like, you don't move past that mental maturity point.
So not only that.
So that's still a child trying to make sense of things.
Not only that, but he was, from what I remember, reading about him, was he was chemically castrated. So his
voice would stay high?
So his voice would stay high-pitched. So I'm
mad at people.
Go down the Michael Jackson rabbit hole.
I can't because I'll get stuck in that kind of stuff. And it's just this thing like, so to me, that's like the same thing where you go back to the spectrum of like, there's, and I don't want to call it like good and evil, right? But there's like this, it's just weird to me because there's people who commit sexual crimes who are doing it out of like, some sense of power, manipulation, and control.
Keep going. I'm just going to tip
and
the
then
cameras.
There's people who are in a position where they may have been abused as a child or brought into something where they don't actually know what it is that they're dealing with. And I usually will use like the comparison between like things that Jeffrey Epstein was doing in a way to like literally traffic, control, and hurt and abuse young children and girls and like women.
Did you see what the new AG had to say about that?
Did
you see that?
Well, I'm just saying like that versus like you're Michael Jackson and you've been thrust into a spotlight before you have any semblance of like what life is itself. You've become the first world superstar, and like you've also been abused in that process, and your mind doesn't really develop, and you don't have friends, and you are alone, and you feel like the only safety you have is with a child.
Well, why
and
do you
like
think
that doesn't make it like okay, but just like these different experiences of like I was hurt, I don't feel safe around people, versus like I am going to get a bunch of blackmail on people and control and abuse people because I enjoy it. Like that's
well, so that's why he built Neverland Ranch, to feel, because like I think about it like this, right? There's two ways you go about that. Like the first way, like for me, obviously you see around here there are a lot of very like, let's say, childish things in here, because this is the shit that I'm into, right? I'm into comic books, I'm into superheroes. This is the shit that I'm into, right? I like this, helps me feel like a kid, right? But I'm also a fully grown adult. I'm a relatively mature guy, right? This is the shit that I'm into. But then you look at Michael Jackson and everything that he went through, and what you're saying about the age, the term you just used was so good, and it's losing me.
Oh, age regression.
Age regression, right? Mm-hmm. Where he didn't mature properly. I really do think he still had, while he operated as a fully grown adult, he still had the brain of a child. Mm-hmm. And so that's what he built. He took his fortune and built around it. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's no fucking wonder. But what I really liked about with the new AG, because Matt Gaetz stepped down, Trump puts in one of his lead lawyers to be the new AG, and she got interviewed, I think like 2 days ago or so. No, I think maybe it was today. I don't know. Time's weird. But she got interviewed, and she brought up, she goes, if you're on the Epstein client list, you should be scared.
That'd be lovely.
And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I think we need to hold people accountable. That's my concern, because you look at like, I was listening to something else that was talking about the way that like Citibank is supposedly used as like one of the main banks for folks who are doing like large scale laundering and fraudulent financial activities. But when you make a certain amount of money, there is no punishment for you. All it is a fine if you can afford it. And that Citibank would just be paying all these fines. I think I might have a Citibank card. Please don't cancel me. But like, it's just like the same thing where when you have enough power and status, you think that you can like circumvent punishment because you're above other people. And I don't know if you like watched the Epstein series that they had put on Netflix a little while after he died.
I don't trust shit that goes, anything that's mainstream about Epstein, I don't trust.
I think that they did a really good job.
I find it hard to trust, I guess. Let's put it that way.
Well, the piece of it that I was looking at was the fact that the way that the AG at that time, or whoever, when he was in trouble in like Florida, the way they did his sentence was that he only had like 24 to 48 hours required during the weeks of his sentence, where he was sentenced for a certain amount of time. But the deal that they struck was that he only had to be in building under lockdown for like 2 of those days.
I remember reading about that.
So he would like fly around to all his same Zorro Ranch right outside of Moriarty and all these other places around the entire United States, and then just go back to prison on the weekends because like he could afford it. And that's the kind of stuff where like that just seems ridiculous to me, and ridiculously unfair is not the right word, but like unjust, because you can't do that, and you can't just, oh well, yeah, we know it's a crime, we know that, but we're just going to pay the fine and keep doing it because we can afford to.
And
like,
that's
that is ridiculous, and that's the point that our countries have gotten to. That it feels sometimes like this
countries is the correct word, because Israel may or may not have a pretty big stake in that, because he may or may not have been a Mossad agent. But it's all very interesting. Yeah, it's all very. How do you? Okay, so on your, because you talk a lot about, and you put it the right way, I think, preserving sanity, right? In your own personal life, it's very clear to me that you're not ignorant to things, right? You're decently read about things. You look into stuff. And I think you go about it, and you mentioned a little bit earlier, because of the fact that you work in government, you go about it the right way. You look at both sides. So in your own personal life, how do you find yourself, for lack of a better term, decompressing for all of this? Mm-hmm. And I ask that question from the standpoint of somebody who I have my own methods of decompressing. Like, okay, I'm intaking all this information primarily because I'm interested in it. Yeah. I don't know why. And I'm not even going to try to understand why. I just know what I'm into. I know what makes my brain tick. And I'm like, okay, these are the things that I'm into looking into. This is what I like learning about. but a lot of them are high stress, and a lot of them are like, oh, fuck, I think we're in a really corrupt situation right now. And I have my own ways of getting around that. How do you do that for yourself?
It's a good segue into the book. Did you plan that?
I did not actually, but maybe I'm decent at this. I don't know.
Hey, you've been doing this a minute. So how I decompress looks a lot of different ways. And the new book, all right, I'm going to do the thing.
Congratulations.
The Road to True Love was kind of based like in that concept because I kind of had like, and thank you. It's been a long time coming, and I was just kind of really scared. So it's been scary. It's like scary to put your thoughts out there in that kind of way, like published on a like black and white piece of paper. Like it's kind of sketchy. Like I'm like, all right, it's real. It's out here. And it's the same way of like coming out and talking about stuff. Like once this is up, it's like, it's real. It's out there. And I think making things real is like kind of scary. But it's also a lot of like what I've done, and I can talk about that in a couple different ways, but self-love and self-care for me is like a super big thing. There's been a couple of episodes I've gone through with my own personal health where like if I don't check my stress, I get these phases of these headaches that are like super debilitating that become like light sensitive, and I can't like get up and I can't move. And 3 times now, the third time I think was me being sick from COVID, but neither here nor there. There's been 2 times in my life where like that kind of stress and pressure has gotten so bad in my head that it creates like swelling in my optic nerve, and I have to go get like a spinal tap to bring the pressure down. Well,
okay, so no, I don't want to brush over what you just said about COVID, because a known side effect of both the virus and the, I want to say the Pfizer strain of the shot is neuroinflammation. Well, so because when you were speaking about having episodes where you're very high stress and you're very like you're feeling it psychologically, my brain obviously immediately goes like high cortisol levels. But a symptom of both of those, both the virus and the cure, is neuroinflammation. So that makes a lot of sense.
It could be, and the thing is that both times where I've gone through this condition before, it was pre-pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I've gotten COVID twice. The first time it was on set with a headache. I got like smacked with a terrible headache that night, and then was out for a week. Was
the headache the indicator for you? Or did you lose your taste, use your sense of smell?
I mean, I didn't really know what I was looking for at that time, but the headache was like, it was different than kind of the headache episodes I'm talking about, where it just like knocked me in the middle of like, I'm getting ready to go to bed, and something just like came over me that was like, holy shit, my head fucking hurts. And then I was sick for like, and the taste kind of faded afterwards. I was like, oh my God, it's never coming back.
I was literally, as I got COVID the very first time, it was Thanksgiving of 2020. I'm on my computer and playing videos with my buddies. I mean, I still do it every now and again, but I used to chew a lot, right? And
tobacco?
Yeah. And I had a lip in, and we're playing, and we're all on like on our mics, we're all talking to each other. I'm like, hey guys, not to bring the room down or anything, but I think I have COVID. And like, well, I'm like, I can't taste my chew. And like, I'm like, hey, give me a second. I go upstairs, I grab a green Monster. I crack it. It tastes like club water or club soda.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
I remember experimenting with so many things. I think I ate like a raw clove of garlic because I was like, no, like I need.
You're not the only person that's told me that. That's so funny.
I need to taste something, and I've gotten kind of like a couple colds here and there afterwards, and then like your taste also goes away. Maybe not to like the same extent, but you know, it goes away. But that kind of had nothing to do with it. But the so funny enough, I don't know, the timing's interesting. The first time it happened, and I'm not like I'm a relatively young person. The first time I got that headache episode, in addition to like the stress that was happening, it's kind of funny, but it's not funny. But it was like right before and as the 2008 financial crisis is about to happen, and I was like 12, so like it wasn't really that big of a that's like not what was playing on me, but like the whatever
it's around. No, it's around you.
What was going on like societally could have played a role. And when I got the second time that happened, it was like right before COVID was even announced. It was like right before, and it's just this thing. So like when that happened, and I was under that much stress and that much pressure, it was like society self-induced pressure, but also like me, because I'm really, really, really hard on myself. Like, I'm hypercritical, and like I'm don't know why I'm so rough on myself. And then part of the reason why like the books come out of that is because like, damn, like, why am I like not loving on myself? Why am I not giving myself like patience? Why am I so expecting like 10 out of 10 out of 10 like every time for myself, when like I'm human and I'm not a robot, I'm not a computer. Like, perfection, I think I say this somewhere in the book, like, perfection is not a person's job. That's like a computer's job. Like, leave that to the AI. Like, let them figure that out. That's not why we're here. So taking care of myself and making sure that I'm okay. When I came out of it that first time, I like, and the thing is about my condition. They diagnosed me with like IIH, idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Okay. I don't know, some random acronym, and idiopathic means they don't know the cause of it.
Great start.
Right. That they don't know the cause of it. And then like all they could give me was like, oh, well, it's kind of common in young women who are like moderately overweight and are of childbearing age, but we don't know anything else about the condition. And I was like, this is not helpful.
That is such a large pool of people. So slightly overweight, large pool of people. Women.
Childbearing age.
Okay, so childbearing
anywhere
age.
From,
is it what, like 14 to 32?
Oh, 14 to like 40.
That, yeah. You know? Like, that's crazy.
So they're telling me that, and like that's not helpful. And then they're like, yeah, you know, like there's swelling in your optic nerve. Like you're the first time it happened, my white blood cell count was really, really high, or the opening pressure when they did the spinal tap is like way above normal. Like, but they don't have anything to tell me about why it happened, what caused it, what can I do to prevent it in the future. Like, literally had no way of telling me. And this is after I had to like fight to get an appointment at the eye doctor to tell them I'm in physical pain and distress, and I know that if you look at my eyes, there's going to be some sort of swelling or pressure in like my optic nerves, and that's the only way that I could get ER to even take me in for an appointment. And they were supposed to send me in to see a neurosurgeon, but it was COVID, so they canceled the appointment and never rescheduled. It was nuts. But like, they didn't have any answers for me. So I was like, okay, thank you, Western medicine. I appreciate like the effort. Thank you for the spinal tap. My headaches have gone away. I feel like a lot better because that's the only thing that's taken like the pressure down. But I had to go and find things out for myself. So I started doing like acupuncture, and then I picked up meditation and mindfulness and doing these things that like were calibrating the stress I was under, because I do work a government job, and now I am in like a high level position where like I like willingly take the weight of the world on my shoulders sometimes. I don't know why the hell I'd be doing that, but it's something I'd be doing. And I'm trying to like get better at that, but finding practices that worked for me to keep me in balance and in equilibrium was like a life and death matter, because I didn't want to end up back with another, like, I don't think having like several spinal taps in a lifetime is like a really good way to like solve problems. You know what I mean?
Probably not.
And then I've had thoughts like, is this going to affect my scuba diving? Like, is something bad going to happen when I'm down there? Like, and they don't really know. So I changed my diet. I started meditating. I started doing these things, and I started trying to like make time for myself. And like so many things shifted out of that. And I think I found and was talking to a therapist at the time who did more like spiritual modality. And I kind of picked up like doing some stuff around like contract burning and...
doing what? What?
Contract burning? Yeah. How do I talk about contract burning? Besides like literally burning contracts? No. Kind of like writing things down that I wanted to let go of. Right? Or situations that maybe I hadn't had any kind of resolve to. And for me, when I write things down, I can get them out of my head. I don't know about you, but like, and when I have stuff on my mind and it's bugging me, it'll circle.
Oh, yeah.
And it circles and it circles and it circles, and it almost like will burrow itself in. And that's like same if it's negative thoughts or like a problem with the person or whatever it is. But when I write it down, when it comes up, it's like it leaves, and it just... boom, it's on the paper, right? And then it's like I can kind of relax, and it's not giving me that same like intensity that it's been giving me, and it'll kind of like subside. And then the contract burning piece of that is like, whoops, I might take that like ritually and like ball it up, and I'm done with this, and I'm going to go outside and like light it with a lighter, and let it go and just go like,
well, that's a very anecdotal thing that I've heard a lot, where it's like if you have a lot of it towards relationships, whether it's like romantic relationships, deep friendships, family members, you write them a letter saying everything you've ever wanted to say, whether you wanted to say to them, whether it's you don't have the balls yourself to say it, you don't feel safe telling them that, or you don't have contact with them, so you can't. Even though I say they're dead, but just like you don't have contact with them, so you can't say it. You write all that shit down, you make peace with it, and you get rid of it. Yeah. That's a very anecdotal thing that works for a lot of people.
It's funny, but it really does. It depends, right, and how much you put into it. But like,
there's like a cathartic release.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of it too, though. I've never done that myself, but just outside looking in, I'd imagine a lot of it is like how honest are you being when doing it?
Right.
Like, are you leaving any of it? If you really dump all of that onto a page and you just whatever method you use to destroy it, it's like, all right.
And you let it go.
Try to make peace with it and fucking move on, man.
Yeah, and I think like and I don't know enough about, because like I'm not like a brain whatever or like a neurologist and stuff, but you know how they say like when you're watching someone do an activity, your brain doesn't know the difference of if you're doing it yourself. Like if you're watching people play sports, the brain and neurons firing in your brain will be as if you are playing that sport, even though you're not.
Okay, I see what you're saying. You know
what I'm saying? Okay.
That makes sense. No, that makes sense. I don't know what it is either, but I think the easiest way to put it is I think it's something that's not talked about a lot. I don't think it's something that's really like championed or like celebrated enough, but it's like people get enjoyment out of watching other people succeed. You don't have to succeed at something yourself to appreciate and love what, like, for instance, I'm not the biggest sports guy. Like, I love boxing and I love watching MMA, but like, I'm not the biggest basketball guy.
Jake Paul right now, right? Like, but I love seeing Jake Paul.
Well, no, not fucking. No, I was actually a bit fucking upset after that. But anyway.
Me too.
But watching people achieve things, whether it's at these grandiose levels or it's at smaller local levels, people get enjoyment out of that. It's not talked about a lot because these days it's a lot of people are stuck in it's a famine, right? It's not a feast that it's like, hey, there's not enough for everybody. I got to get it for myself. Fucking, which I think is a load of bullshit.
I think it's BS.
But
too.
I even like today before we started doing this podcast, and this will come out well after the music started came out. But I was calling. That's why I was on the phone with Leroy. I was calling all the members of the slums because they sent me because we're doing a live podcast next week, and I haven't announced it yet, but we're gonna do a live podcast next week for their new EP, and they sent me their EP via Dropbox, and holy fuck,
hey,
it is so fucking good, and I met those guys 3 years ago now, I think.
So you've gotten to see like the arc.
Yeah, and we've also become very good friends.
Yeah.
So I love all those dudes.
Cool.
Great guys. And aside from the fact that it's just good music, listening to this achievement that they've made me happy.
Good.
Because it's like, oh, these are my homies. They made something really dope. That's awesome. I'm not very good at playing guitar at all. I can't sing worth a shit. I've had a call come in while I'm listening to music and singing along, and that fucking happens. I'm like, oh my God, all right, stick to comedy, you fucking idiot. But
no, you got to sing if you want to sing, man.
But like, I'm not good at these things, but that doesn't mean I can't appreciate it when these things happen.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very real thing. With the brain saying like it can't differentiate, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, there's science behind it too, and same thing when you're watching TV, even if we don't really like think of it because it puts you into like an alpha state, but I won't go down that thing.
Well, I mean,
but when you're writing
cool.
these things down and you're doing it, it could be as if your brain thinks you're actually writing the letter or making the statement, right? So that same ease exists when you're done. Even if you didn't do it directly, you might have done it like indirectly. But for me, like, writing has been a tool for me to let go of thoughts that have been circling, and it's why journaling is so powerful. So part of the book has like the actionable self-love toolkit, which I talk about, which are kind of like these strategies that you can use no matter where you're at, when you're at, who you're with, whatever, that you can implement to kind of just bring that sense of awareness and stuff back into your own self and back into your own body and like cultivate an appreciation and caring and self-love for yourself, like in that moment. And I think that, again, when we were talking about like education earlier, like they don't teach people how to do that. You're not journaling in school. You're writing papers and then you hate writing papers and you think English is a bunch of crap and you're doing vocabulary, but no one said, hey, have you thought about like writing your feelings out? And like, it's not to say that that can't be weaponized. I've had experiences where like I've written my thoughts down that weren't supposed to be read, and then someone like finds them, and then that's going to be like used against me. She's like, terrible, right? So if you do need to burn it, burn it. If you don't want no one to read that, then you best not be keeping it. But like those kinds of things have had to keep me like sane. And I, even through like learning a little bit about like, so body testing is another one that I put in there, which is like asking yourself and kind of like waiting for these little responses that your body will do that are real quiet. And real hard to like notice, but when you ask them like yes and no and true and false questions, it's kind of surprising because your body will actually respond like properly. And there's different methodologies to doing that, and I get into some of that, but I think there's this thing that we do in society to like take it back to like the book and like self-love and self-care is like we don't prioritize self-love and self-care because we've been taught to take care of others and put other things first.
So before we move on, body testing, like what's one of the methods? I just look that up real quick. It's kind of cool, but like what's one of the methods?
Yeah, so even just like standing straight up and down and kind of like asking a question and waiting for your body to kind of give a little, if you kind of like lean forward or you lean back, that's one. Where it's more of like a yes and no. There's also like what I usually do is I'll make 90-degree angle with like my arm to the side and I put a fist. So I'm holding like a right angle to my side and I hold my arm strong like this and I'll ask a question. You know, is my name Shani? And I'm pushing down and my hand's like pretty steady, right? Okay, like is my name Noah? And it's like that gives way a little bit. And those are like super simple questions, right? But so like there's strength there when I'm saying something that's like true and valid. And if I'm saying something that's false, there's like a little bit of give. And like you have to test it, right? You don't have to test it over and over again because I'm like, body, I believe you. I don't mean to like try and play you.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's like it's your gut intuition.
It could be.
I think that's a bit that plays into it. It's just and I was going to bring that up a little bit earlier about what you were talking about. You know, about like seed oils. I was like, I know these things are bad for me. Why is it not working for me? It's like, well, you don't even have to go to like, in my opinion, when it comes to your own health, like obviously if like a fucking disease or a real sickness or an illness or something's not working right in your body, go see a doctor. God, go see a doctor. But if you're eating something over and over again, it might not be agreeing. Like I love ice cream. I can't eat a lot of ice cream anymore because I'll turn into a fucking slip and slide. Like it's not good. But it's like, if you're trying to find out something works for you doesn't work for you, has it worked for you in the past?
Right.
Is it the thing? Is it the way you're using it? Is it whatever? But you know, because you've experienced it. Think about what you've experienced. Think about what it's done to you, for you, against you, whatever. And go from there. So it's all body intuition.
Yeah. And like your body knows, right? They say like the mind breaks before the body does. Like the body is capable of so much more than we really give it credit for.
Yep. And
there's things that like we do know, and whether or not that's like yes and no stuff, or it's food choices, or something around like, is this, you know, should I go out tonight, or something like that. Like asking those questions first, because it's kind of funny because I did have an experience like last week when I was in St. Louis, and I was like, I'm gonna eat this catfish, I'm gonna eat this fried okra, I'm gonna be good, it's gonna be so great, and that was like not the decision that my body wanted me to make. Did I ask my body? No, I didn't really care because I was excited. Did I learn my lesson? God damn it, I did. But also I was like eating really good for a solid 3-4 weeks, and then I just like ingested an insanely amount of ridiculous fried food. Like obviously that wasn't probably going to work out the way that I wanted it to, no matter how high the hopes were for me. But situations around like friendships and relationships and decision making, jobs, things like that, I've used like body testing on, and it's been something that's been like useful for me. And one of my girlfriends, shout out to Daylin, and I can't do it because I have like nails on. It's not working, but she'll do body testing where she takes 2 circles with her pointer finger and her thumb and links them together. And she's like pulling to see if it breaks or not. And that one hasn't, like, I've tried it a couple of times. It doesn't work for me, but like, again, what works for me?
Like, I use a lot of lotion, so it's it's a slick surface.
It's hard to know. But the other one that I use is I kind of stand and I like quiet my body, my mind, and I'll like ask myself a question, and there's like this slight sensation of like me moving back, or like there's a slight sensation of me moving forward. I've even tested it on local elections before, so we'll see. But those are just like tools that like in the moment when I'm like, do I need to like be here anymore? Or like, how do I need to like make my way through this meeting? Like things like that are just these subtle techniques that give you power back instead of trying to put it out to like waiting for something else to give you a sign or to tell you or to confirm. And that is kind of like this concept around like the book's on love, right? The road to true love. And I kind of make this case that, which is something that we all know when we talk about, you can't love another person if you don't love yourself first, or like you can't receive love from another person if you don't love yourself first. And just getting actually familiar with what that concept meant, because there was so many things that like when I was sick, or stressed out or whatever it was, when I was having those headache episodes with the IIH, that like I wasn't really like taking care of myself. I didn't know what I needed. I was running around doing stuff for other people, putting my time into other people, other relationships, other job priorities, and I wasn't stopping to figure out like, what does Shani need in the moment, right? Or like waiting for like a partner to like play a role in your life where they're going to be all these different things for you, and we put that on someone instead of learning how to do that for ourselves first. And it's not about like, well, I can do this myself and I don't need anybody. And one of my other friends can give me a whole lot of shit about this because I have a hard time like accepting help from people. But there's this thing that we've done with love in society and like friendships and stuff where we put that expectation onto other people, and we expect like our friends need to be there for us all the time when like they have like their own stuff going on, and like, can we really hold them accountable for not being there when we needed them there?
Well, there's a barometer, right, for what a good friend is. And everyone has their own standards and expectations. And you're right, some of them are too high and too whatever, and some of them are too fucking low. Like some people have such low standards for friends and have such low standards for who they surround themselves with, where they either A, don't acknowledge the damage that they're doing in their life, just being an influence, or they know the damage they're doing and they just don't really do anything about it. Like that's certainly a thing.
Yeah.
Like you should, as a functioning adult, you should be able to sustain yourself. You should be able to fucking feed, wash, and operate.
You
right?
should.
You should be able to, right?
Can everybody do that?
Not a lot of people can. It is what it is. But generally speaking, you should be able to take care of yourself, take care of your body, whatever. That should be a thing, right? But what I would say though as well is, on the other hand of that, and it's popped up a lot lately, and I think it's a direct, especially in men, it's a direct answer to a culture that's saying masculinity is toxic and men are this, and just generally speaking, men are this, men are that. It's this lone wolf bullshit that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's like, no, we are built like just in the same way that humans are not supposed to be living in these, like humans are not supposed to operate correctly in a place like LA or New York, where it's millions of people shoved into this little area, and you're all supposed to operate and be nice to each other, and like it's just not in us as a human being. Like it's not the best recipe for success.
Right.
But in the same way, you shouldn't be the fucking Unabomber going off on your own, living alone on your lonesome. You go crazy a little bit. Right. But there's a happy, like, we're supposed to be living in these communities of like 200 to 400 people where everybody knows each other. That's how we've been for however long, right? We were like until modern civilization started being a thing, and it is what it is. But that's why you should at least have small groups of either friends around you or your family around you, a mix of both, whatever it is that suits you. That's why you have your small community around you.
Right.
That's what holds you accountable. That's what holds you together. And then when you start getting into more, at least in my opinion, you start getting into like romantic relationships, that's where you can add a little bit more of expectation. Yeah. Where it's like, yeah, but you're more than a friend. You should be, around a little bit more. You should be a little more emotionally invested in me, and I should be mostly invested in you and your well-being and my well-being. But it's an ebb and a flow kind of thing.
And you totally should. But if you don't know, like, your own trauma and your own triggers and the things that you need as an individual to make sure that you're, like, balanced and in a good state of being, like, you're not going to be able to show up fully in that relationship.
Right. Won't be emotionally healthy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You won't be emotionally healthy. You won't be like in a healthy way contributing to that. Yeah, you're correct.
Like if you don't have an understanding of how to take care of those aspects of yourself, and I think that there's a lot of people who are also givers in relationships, and they want to be, you know, and I think it's interesting because this is like a modern relationship critique, and I'm not, my relationship history ain't like, ain't all that, but there's this expectation where like you want them to be the partner, the lover, the friend, the therapist, and all these other pieces where like we need to figure out that self-regulation for ourselves because we come.
Well, it's like, are you all of that?
Right. We're like, can you be, well, who is all of that? And how can you put all of that on one person? But also, how can you engage like responsibly and intentionally in a relationship if you're bringing in stuff that you're not aware of? And that's not to say like you need to be perfectly healed to be in a relationship. Like no one's expecting that either.
Well, nobody's perfectly healed from everything that happens in their lives.
You can't be.
With a lot of things in your life, unfortunately, big or small, whatever it is, a lot of people, I know this from personal experience, you accept what fucking happened, you pick it up and you move the fuck on, dude. Mm-hmm. Like 100, you probably won't reach 100% on most things in your life, and that's fine. Yeah. But just keep fucking going. Right. Like that doesn't give you fucking carte blanche, so that doesn't give you an excuse to hurt people. Right. But you know, healthily accept what is. Mm-hmm. Pick up whatever pieces are still there. Make a new puzzle and move on.
Yeah, and I think like my thing with like the book, which like I feel like people like intuitively know, but then we don't realize that we actually are not practicing it, is that like when we look at, so I make these like connections between like I think for people like watch things like the Notebook and
Talk
Titanic.
A little closer into your mic, just a little bit closer.
Yeah, people think about like the Notebook and Titanic, and they have this expectation of like what relationships need to look like. Or they watch Disney movies and
let your partner die in a frozen ocean. Freezing ocean. No, I'm sorry. Leave your existing rich partner that you're with and hook up with the poor guy, and then let him die in the freezing ocean. Relationships by James Cameron.
Relationships 101. But this expectation, right? Or even when you look at like Disney movies, like I need to wait for someone to come rescue me. Or on the vice versa side, I need to come and save this person because they need a Prince Charming, or I need this. And like they give us these archetypes and ideals that make it so that when we're searching for fulfilling love in relationships, we're like putting an expectation on the external person to meet these needs for us, which can't actually be met by an external party, because then the same thing happens if you get out of that relationship or someone passes away or things change, and whether that's like a friend, a parent, a pet, like partner, whatever we're talking about, that leaves, and then we're left with like this sense of loss. When my thing about that is that like love is actually something that starts from within, and we're actually like cutting ourselves off from that emotion or feeling because we are tying it to that person, place, or thing outside of us that brought it up for us and made it be present in our lives. But then when that thing is no longer present in our lives, we restrict ourselves from feeling that feeling, which isn't fair to us, because that feeling that you're feeling came from you. You know what I mean? Like you're the one who's in your body, in this spirit, in this being, in this time. You're producing those emotions for yourself. And I think that that's where we get confused, is because we take breakups like super hard. And it's not to say like don't take a breakup hard. It's just don't get lost in the fact that the things that you loved and admired and cherished about that person are a reflection of what is already available within you.
And not only that, this is one of the two of the biggest pieces of advice you just made me think of that I've gotten with stuff like this is when you're leaving a relationship, whether it's on your own choosing or not, yes, you're mourning the loss of a person in your life, but you're more so mourning a future that's not there anymore, and your brain is so attached to the potential of what this is going to turn into or what it's going to continue to be, and you're mourning that. And the sooner that you figure that out, and I lost my second point, but the sooner you realize that that's what you're really mourning, I think it's the easier, it's an easier way to go around that and just for lack of a better term, get over it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, with most things in life, you kind of have to. Oh, the second thing I was going to say, yeah. So a lot of things in life is how you react to it, and that's not taking away from horrible things that happen to people, and taking away the gravity of situations, whether it's like losing it, like I said, losing a family, someone passing away, or getting assaulted, or having your fucking shit stolen, or having your house burned, losing a job, losing your car. It's Albuquerque. Your car getting stolen. Like that's not, that's not taking away from these objectively bad things that happen in your life. But a lot of life is how you process it and how you deal with it. Right. Because the same thing can happen to two different people.
And they can take it
and they take it completely different. And that's not to say you should be like this delusionally positive person. Like, oh no, it's okay, because you'll crack just as easily as the nihilistic person. But at least for how my brain works, I live in I do my best. I fail a lot, like most people, but I do my best to live in just where it's realist. It was realistic. It was like, okay, yeah, this sucks, but we were okay before this happened. Or we're going to be okay afterwards, or we've had this happen before. We've lost a job before. I've been fired before. I've lost a job before, or I've gone through this horrible thing before, or whatever it is. And we made it to the next one. So as long as we don't do anything incredibly stupid, I think we're going to be okay. Outside of making absolutely life-altering decisions. Yeah. I think we're going to be all right. So it's the way you process things and the way you react to it that's going to really decide about 90% of the outcome. Right. And again, outside of like legal issues and all of that. Right. But how you handle day-to-day things.
And that's the thing about whether or not you have those practices and those things about your own self-awareness in place to know what you need in order to process. So like, what do? I write a lot. What do? I gig, right? And like I play music because that brings me sanity.
I did want to mention this before we wrap up. I did want to mention this. The first time I've seen you perform a couple of times. The first time I ever saw you perform, I got invited by Leroy and Nevin, and it was at the place is closed. I think it reopened, but it like shut down for a while. La Luna? No, it was Monte Cristo, I think.
Monte Vista.
Monte Vista. Thank you. It was at Monte Vista. It was with you and Just Velvet. Very talented group of people, by the way. Thank you. Very talented. And they invited me like, hey, yeah, one of our friends is playing. Because I knew Dan beforehand. And Dan's in this band called Just Velvet. They're all really talented. You should come hang out. I'm like, all right, sounds good. So I go out there. You blew me the fuck away.
Oh, thank you.
You are a very, very great musician. Very talented vocalist, singer, whatever noun you'd like to use. You have an amazing voice. So congratulations on that. All the work you've put into it, and I'm not excusing natural talent, but the clear work you've put into it, you're quite great.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a mission, and I didn't think I'd be playing music. Right? I grew up playing saxophone middle school and high school, and then I was like prepping for a music performance degree, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to college for music. Like, y'all have to be out of your mind to think if I'm going to go do this again for another 4 years, just because of the way that like classical music training works sometimes, and like my brain doesn't work that way, so theory and all that stuff is like over my head. But thank you, because building like confidence and being up there in front of people and singing and stuff like that is not, I still get uncomfortable. It's like not that straightforward. It's not easy, and I think like the trick is people make it look easy, but there's a lot of people who are still up there terrified. If they're not, they're like weirdly.
What really sunk it in for me that the pros still get nervous was when, I think it was 2 years ago. I'm going to say this, and I have one last question for you. 2 years ago, Tom Segura put out a Netflix special, and in the opening of the special, he's standing in the walkway to go out to the stage, and one of his buddies walks up to him and goes, "You're the best fucking comedian on the planet. Don't forget that." And he kind of stiffened up a little bit, got confidence, and walked out there. Now, sure, it might have all been performative or whatever, but then I take that as like it's real. Like, oh, so even someone like Tom Segura gets nervous. I think I'm okay. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's okay to be nervous. Like, I think it's natural. I think it's normal. But the last thing I wanted to ask you, and I want to do this again, by the way, You're very fun to talk to.
Oh.
You are a lot of fun. This has been a great conversation. So with everything that you've said, how do you find ways, trying to word this the right way so I can get my own thought across properly? How do you find ways to remind yourself that you do love yourself? Because you clearly do. In the way that you speak about your actions, the things that you do, the amount of work you put into things outside the day job, right? You don't have to be writing a book. You don't have to be playing music. You don't have to, but you do anyway. And you clearly love doing these things, thinking about these things, staying with these things. What do you do to remind yourself that you do love yourself? And how do you get to the point of doing that?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think that it's taken years and repetition to figure out how to do that. And I think a lot of that journey and a lot of those tools are expressed like throughout the book and its pages. And it changes. And there's been a lot of points like self-confidence and self-love are so nuanced because I have a lot of reasons. I have a lot of reasons. I don't actually have a lot of reasons to beat myself up, but I find reasons to, because I think I'm human like everyone else. And we've been raised in a society that wants us to kind of beat ourselves up and not let ourselves out of the box. And we want to stay boxed in. So to figure out how to remind myself of that and that it is possible and like I am capable and I do love myself is kind of like in the moments when I manage to get outside and see from the observer when I'm having like the negative thoughts come in, it's like me being like, wait a minute, like that's not right. Or like, let me look at like at the evidence around me. Like I'm feeling a certain way right now. Like I feel alone. I feel lonely. I feel like I don't have community. That's been a really big one. Not for me lately, but was really, really big almost like kind of before I stepped into the music scene. Like I didn't have that. And having to like remind myself in those really like dark moments that it's like it is going to be okay and that I'm like that I am worthy. Like I'm still working on that. And I think there's even like reflected in some of like the actions and stuff that I take. Like people will give me like compliments and I don't really know how to accept them because I'm not sure that I like am ready or like allowed to like allow that to happen. And that's because I have like some perfectionism that I'm probably still trying to like fight and work through because we're not supposed to be perfect. But I think that there's like an inner knowing there that like I do like love myself and I'm going to try and do my best to take care of myself. And in those moments when I have a lot of frustration, like there's been times where I've like gone back through journals and seen like really dark things that I've like written, and I'll like write back to myself with a little note at the bottom. It's like, hey, like we're still here and like you're okay and like we're kicking ass and everything is going to be okay. And like I believe in you and we can make it through this. And like I'm here for you. Me talking to myself, I'm here for me. Anyway, I don't know how that works, but like I have to like remind myself, and sometimes that's not happening when it's happening. Like it'll be after whatever that dark night may be or however long that lasts. And I'm like you have to find like a reminder or like reach out to the people or find inspiration in the things. And that's why I say like self-love looks different for everyone, because there's a lot like for me, like I do love like dancing a lot too. So like I'll be like dancing around my studio, like music blaring. No one else can see me, so I'm doing whatever the hell I want. So I can't get like no judgment about all those things. But like I have to find something that sparks a little bit of like dopamine, I guess, or serotonin, like in my own space and well-being, and then remind myself like I can do this and I'm allowed to do this. And I don't know if that really answers your question.
That's pretty great. No, that's pretty great. Listen, this has been a lot of fun. I'd love to do it again sometime. It's certainly not just one of my favorite episodes for something I've never had on before, but one of my favorites I've done this year. So thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Noah. And OnlyKings. It's a badass name too.
Thanks.
Like very like creative and way to play on like modern trends. I appreciate that.
There may or may not be a rebrand coming soon. I'm still working that out, but okay. we'll see.
That's
we
funny,
shall see.
last thing I'll say is that I like one of my comments that's been most liked on Instagram is those guys that make like a bunch of hilarious reels, but they were talking about OnlyFans, and they're like, oh my god, yeah, they're like women-owned businesses, and I was like, women-owned businesses? I commented, I said, those aren't women-owned businesses, those are independent contractors, and I've gotten like a ridiculous like number of likes on that, which is like, they could be women-owned businesses, but they're not because they're contracting through. But
that's funny.
Like, anyway.
Before we get out of here, where can everyone find you on social media? Find your music? How can they buy the book?
Yeah, everything is on ShaniMikaela.com because I put that together. And right now my handle is at They Live We Love. So you can find it there, and The Road to True Love on Instagram as well, or theroadtotruelove.com.
Sweet. And all of what she just listed will be in the description of this episode as well. Cool. So thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you everyone for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye everybody.